Well, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are, whatever your time zone, welcome. This is Digital Transformation Talk, and I am your host, Kevin Crane. Welcome to the show. We are here today to explore ways to elevate your customer engagement with AI. Now, this is a subject that we've been hovering around on this show and certainly on our sister show, MarTech Talk. And it's an important one because with all the hype surrounding AI these days, it is important to remember why we're excited. Why are we excited about the possibilities and the opportunities associated with AI? Well, one reason, in my mind anyway, is the influence and the impact on our ability to provide superior customer engagement and experience. To me, this is one place where the rubber meets the road in terms of digital transformation and business success. Now, look, we've talked about the high rates of failure with digital transformation and the lack of alignment between tech goals and business goals as one reason for that high failure rate. But connecting customer experience with digital transformation is one way to be more sure of finding success. In fact, it's not about the technology, it's about the level of process improvement and innovation that we can bring to the way the organization performs. And if I can use AI to improve my customer engagement and my customer experience, well, and really prove it and really improve it in ways that I can measure and demonstrate, then I've found real success with digital transformation. We all know the bottom line impact of superior or not so superior customer experience. According to American Express, 90% of Americans, for example, use customer service as a factor in deciding whether or not to even do business with a company. And worldwide, over 30% of consumers say that they have stopped doing business with a brand that they love after just one bad experience. On the flip side, 86% of consumers are willing to pay more for better customer experience and engagement, and increasing customer engagement increases customer retention rates. According to Bain, just a 5% increase in retention can lead to increased profits ranging from 25% to up to 95%. So where does AI fit in all of this? That's what we'll be discussing today with a great panel of guests. Why customer engagement is foundational to your business success, how the latest conversational and Gen AI disciplines allow us to engage with more customers better, and how AI can be used to drive customer loyalty through things like personalized communications and other techniques. All of that with two great guests today. But before I introduce our guests, I do want to say that we want to hear from you too. I'd like to encourage everyone attending today to participate. So please join in with your comments in the chat section. And if you have a question along the way, please jump in. We will attempt to get some of your questions into the flow of the show today. And we'll have a few minutes also at the end for your questions and comments. All right, let's bring our guests on board today, starting with Stephen Giuffre. Stephen is a senior product marketing manager at Vonage. Stephen, welcome aboard. Where are you calling in from?
I'm calling in from Los Angeles, Kevin. Good morning.
Los Angeles. I spent many years in Los Angeles, and I still love it down there. The Southern California weather, you just can't beat it. But how is the rain? You guys went through a bunch of rain just a few days ago. Everything good?
Yeah, last week, and I think in the week before that, it was kind of uncharacteristically rainy, and we're expecting some more this weekend. But you know what? I'll take a week's worth of rain for the consistent weather at other points of the year.
Yeah, dude, I'll take it. Absolutely. All right. Well, Stephen, welcome aboard. Also joining us today is Eric Siegel. Eric is the founder of Machine Learning Week and the author of the new book, The AI Playbook. Eric, welcome aboard. Where are you calling in from today?
Thanks, Kevin. It's great to be on the show. I'm in Marin. That's the San Francisco Bay Area, just north of San Francisco.
All right. I know Marin County. Sure. Two Californians today. Eric, you must have gotten some heavy rain as well up there in Marin.
We've been getting some rain, but I just remember a year ago, it was just nonstop rain for maybe the first 8 weeks of the year, and it hasn't been that bad this time. So it's been pretty nice.
All right. All right. Well, good. We're holding down the west coast of the United States here today. I'm in Portland, Oregon. So welcome aboard, Eric and Stephen. Thank you so much for being with us today. To get us started, I want to direct our attention to an article published recently by SAP, who announced new AI-driven capabilities to help retailers optimize their business process and drive profitability and customer loyalty. All of these things driving up to customer experience, these capabilities from planning, personalization, and data-driven decision-making provide retailers with insights and analysis to help them better adapt to customer expectations and changes in the market. Among them are predictive demand planning capabilities that provide retailers with more accurate and longer range demand forecasts. These predictive capabilities also extend to store replenishment and just-in-time fulfillment. Also included in some of the capabilities are TikTok and LinkedIn integration for digital ads, and marketers are empowered to segment their customers, manage their leads, and really work to optimize their ad spend. These are all just examples of some of the AI-driven capabilities that are now built into SAP. So my question to you, gentlemen, is how do you feel these and other AI integrations will help organizations boost their customer acquisition, retention, and engagement? And do you feel it's just the tip of the iceberg? Eric, I'd like to start with you, if I may. What is your impression from this news from SAP?
Well, I think it's great. I think they're focusing on the right thing, which is predictive. You know, it's amazing. In that press release, there's not one mention of generative AI. I'm not against generative AI. I think it's extremely potentially powerful for certain uses, for writing first drafts and creating first draft images and of computer code. But I do feel it's a bit oversold, and there's a trendiness where everyone feels like that's the thing they need to use. The fact is, predictive AI, where you're learning from data to predict whether each individual will click, buy, lie, or die, commit an act of fraud, turn out to be a credit risk, right? Those are the established, long-term, decades-old enterprise use cases of machine learning. It's older than generative AI, but it's not old school. We've still only tapped the tip of the iceberg in terms of all the use cases. And basically predictive from the customer's standpoint, it really provides the antidote to information overload. So that's what's ordering search results with Google. That's what's ordering your Facebook feed order. Which of the posts from friends in recent times are most likely to be most relevant or interesting to you? This is how you're protected from fraud. Which transactions should be allowed to go through? Product recommendations, your email inbox spam. So these types of enterprise use cases, that's really where the money still is compared to generative AI. It's not a competition. They're kind of apples and oranges, but that's something that I've been trying to pivot off generative AI, and SAP has done it for me this morning, and say, wait, don't forget about predictive. It's often, if not more often than not, the more valuable potential use case for you to explore depending on your organizational context.
So what you're saying, Eric, is that digital transformation enables organizations to really gather and analyze vast amounts of customer data in ways that we really couldn't do before, and that is these insights that can be used to leverage our and make more informed decision making about how we deal with customers, how we deal with our products, and how we link those to our performance indicators for the organization. Is that about right?
Yeah, data is experience from which to learn. It encodes the collective experience of an organization. It's a list of prior events. It's not just a bunch of arcane ones and zeros. That's why it's valuable, because the most actionable thing you can get from data is to learn how to predict, and those historical cases are what you're learning from. It's literally called training data, and that's the input to machine learning software. And then the models that are generated from that data that are, you could consider them learned from the data, that are ascertaining patterns and discoveries, are then used to put probabilities on whatever outcome and behavior, click, buy, lie, die, commit an act of fraud, whatever it is that might help improve operations. So this is the type of AI, predictive analytics, machine learning, enterprise use cases that you turn to when you want to improve any and all, almost any, of your existing large-scale operations. Where to drill for oil, who to market to, which transaction to audit for fraud, which satellite to investigate is potentially running out of battery, and which wheel of a train to investigate is potentially being faulty.
All right, Stephen, let's get your take on this article from SAP. How do you feel that these and other AI integrations will help us enhance customer engagement and experience?
Yes. The statement in that article that stood out for me was AI is only as good as the data that powers it. And from that, I think it really kind of points to the great decision making opportunity here that AI presents. I do think predictive certainly plays a big role. I also think that there, as we start talking about generative AI, we'll talk about the opportunities that presents too in a customer engagement strategy. But ultimately, what I appreciated from this article was the fact that you're using data, you're leveraging data, and ultimately, it pulls from data that a business already generates and has. And because you're pulling information, data from multiple systems, at the end of the day, you're ultimately able to present more personalized offerings to your customers. And that kind of cuts across everything from, in our world, we're looking at customer engagement and kind of that experience. So it really kind of points to supporting everything from, predicting on inventories, but also from a customer experience standpoint, everything from on-the-spot guidance, more nuanced, targeted marketing materials, and doing that, kind of across channels, how customers communicate, how consumers communicate, and so ultimately all of that drives better decision making. And with regard to kind of who it's available to, I mean, I think ultimately this technology is democratizing. It's becoming easier through templates, through knowledge bases, through ultimately low-code tools to ultimately create those experiences that are more personalized in that regard. So it really kind of there's a lot of opportunities here. The predictive opportunities that were just mentioned by Eric, as well as what we look at from a customer experience standpoint, and how AI boosts this customer experience in many ways.
It really is changing times when it comes to customer experience, and customers expect a different experience now than we did just a couple of years ago. Indeed, I'm the first one to resist high-tech change, perhaps. I want to talk to a human, I guess. But you know what? More and more, I kind of prefer interacting with some sort of AI assistant. Automation and artificial intelligence technologies really can help build superior customer service through chatbots, virtual assistants, automated response systems, and then free up human agents to focus on more complex issues. Stephen, you mentioned that this is sort of leveling the playing field now. This seems to be maybe a game changer as we move forward when it comes to customer experience. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, yeah, I mean, I think we've certainly seen the trends in the market and the exponential growth of AI, conversational AI in particular. But we also look at what consumers are telling us, and from our standpoint, we survey customers on a yearly basis. And some of the key takeaways here, the key takeaway is that consumers are comfortable with AI at this point. They don't know, for customer engagement is first and foremost the most important thing. What they want in terms of an experience, they want, for example, they want live customer service at some point, but they want it, basically also what we see and what we've heard is that they want to consumers want to take advantage of customer service on a 24/7 basis, and they're becoming comfortable with using virtual agents and other tools to accomplish that. We're seeing more and more that in the responses that we got, about 80% of consumers report a recent use of some sort of AI-assisted tools. And then generally speaking, we found that there's a growing comfort level. Most of the consumers that we surveyed feel very strong, feel comfortable with and have positive feedback on using these tools, because it's not necessarily about the AI itself, but how they can get their results, how they can ultimately have issues resolved faster and completely, but then also being able to have that anchor of a live support, which, by the way, AI also supports when you talk about things like agent assist technologies that ultimately can guide that support experience. And all of this is meant to promote loyalty to your brand.
Yeah. All right, very good. The article is SAP announces new AI-driven retail capabilities to enhance customer experience from planning to personalization. And there is a link in the chat over here to the right, to the left, wherever it is. If you'd like to read that article, please do so. All right, gentlemen, that's great. You know, we've already jumped into some of what I want to talk about today. Let's go ahead and move forward into our first discussion point today, and that is why customer engagement is foundational to your business success. I guess this perhaps isn't a great revelation to most of us, but we tend to forget about, like I said in my intro, why we're excited about technology. And it really boils down to these types of foundational key performance indicators of the organization. If I'm not moving the needle in terms of organizational performance with digital transformation, I have missed the mark. And so let's talk a little bit about customer engagement and what customers want in their engagement with a company today. Stephen, you'd mentioned a couple of big ones, 24/7 access. You know, look, I do a lot of shopping on Amazon in the middle of the night. I don't know about you guys, but 24/7. And I like to be engaged in multiple places. So multi-channel engagement is another real impact that gives me an immediate sort of engagement with organizations. Stephen, what are some of the essential things that we should be considering with digital transformation when it comes to customer engagement as we look forward to 2024 and moving beyond?
Yeah, and I think what's happening here is, like, you know, I talked about the trends over the decade, but really in the here and now in 2024, there really is quite the advancement in support in these types of customer engagement strategies and tools. And I think you kind of hit it on the head to a certain degree, where, you know, ultimately customers, consumers, they expect convenient conversational experiences. And this is based on basically you know, on a couple things: their personal communication preferences. So, you know, we're all getting used to chatbots. You know, but voice is always a comfortable channel, and one that continues to grow in terms of the tools available there. But ultimately, it comes down to they want to use these channels for self-service. But they want quick outcomes, as I mentioned, quick and positive outcomes. And so, you know, ultimately, I'm sorry.
Almost immediate response and outcomes.
Yes. Absolutely. Yes. And it's, you know, it's through the voice channel, it's through you know, traditional messaging channels, it's on the website, but it's also social channels, which we are emerging. And when you talk about the emergence of, you know, the comfort with voice and the use of voice and how that continues to grow, it's really, you know, it's not just the traditional phone call, but it's also, you know, use of mobile phones we found is clearly, you know, still a very prominent use of communications, but it's really more about how it's multi-channel and how voice is embedded within a messaging app, within a social app. So it's reaching customers where they are, you know, and at any moment in communication, you know, on any device, to basically provide that immediacy. So they want, as you mentioned, they want their questions answered immediately and understood. They want to see that their issues are quickly resolved. And then ultimately, you know, what we see here with AI is that it's also ultimately the personalization element. So that's kind of step two, is that adds depth to these channel interactions. You know, convenience and communicating as you're comfortable is one thing, but then also being able to capture data. I mean, I can't stress that enough. It's the importance of leveraging the data that you have on your customers to basically have, you know, their preferences, their history, what purchases they've made, ultimately to provide more targeted experiences in the future, and then also, you know, encouraging the customers to stay loyal, to be loyal to you. And so it's, you know, we see that, you know, using AI is a means to digitize, elevate workflows. It's a real powerful way for customer engagement, but it is customer engagement that is key. And honestly, I might say something a little bit controversial here, is that I think we're ultimately passing the moment of digital transformation and really looking into the area of what I would consider digital defense, in terms of what are the ways that you can, you know, everybody's kind of on board with a digital experience, more and more, but ultimately, what are you doing to stand out, to effectively leverage your data, and then ultimately really provide those targeted experiences, those fast experiences that customers expect?
All right, Eric, Stephen is talking about the really leveraging the power of customer data for experience, but also for organizational performance and competitive advantage. How how do we do that? I mean, it's one thing to engage with customers in maybe different ways, but what I say to them is also important. The content that I'm using and the data that I'm using to drive that response. How exactly do I do that?
Yeah, so what's the interest of the customer and serving them best often can align very nicely with the bottom line of the organization, of the business, whatever KPIs. So those examples I rattled off earlier, where these predictive use cases, predicting whether they're going to click buy, lie, or die to serve them better with better recommendations, less junk mail, less spam, et cetera. In fact, better healthcare. That's where you really do have that potential, but you do need to ensure it's aligned because it can misalign pretty easily. So, for example, sometimes customers don't like being predicted or pigeonholed, right? Sometimes you watch a
Right.
movie of certain genre, and then all of a sudden, all the recommendations are as if that's the only genre you're interested in, right? That's a turnoff for customers. Analogously, when you go to generative, the idea that a chatbot's going to operate autonomously and actually provide high quality customer service, I think that that's a fairy tale. I don't think we're headed in that direction very quickly. I think we can get there in several years within very contained subject matter areas. But for the moment, the stuff's not autonomous. A person's in the loop. Consider it a first draft to help maybe write a letter that then is going to be reviewed by one of your customer service human agents before sent out or what have you. Right? So we have to be very careful of how we're deploying and unleashing this technology. But there's real potential when you are just pursuing the bottom line. So just take fraud detection, for example. That's a perfect example where customers, maybe they're not quite cognizant of it yet, but they totally want to be predicted. They have that expectation. If they see a transaction on their credit card bill that they didn't conduct, they're irritated that it wasn't predictively
That's right.
discovered, because that's what fraud detection is. It's the use of a predictive model, putting probabilities. What are the chances this transaction is legitimate versus fraudulent? So it's not that hard, but we have to look end to end. And more generally, I'd say that my message, and the message I'm trying to deliver with this new book, the AI Playbook, is that the antidote to hype and the sure thing for actually pursuing value is to focus on the concrete value you're going to get from a particular use case, often defined by what's predicted, what's done about it. Is the transaction fraudulent? Block it or audit it. Is the customer going to cancel? Offer them a retention offer, right? So by defining exactly what you're getting from the number crunching, what's predicted, and then how those predictions are going to be used. And that's the rub. You need to actually change operations. That's often the part of these machine learning projects that does not get satisfied. It stalls before deployment, operationalization, going to production, whatever you want to call it. It doesn't actually affect change, but you can't improve operations unless you're willing to change them. That's a change management thing. It needs to be planned very carefully from the get-go. What's predicted and what's done about it.
All right, very good. Let's talk about those use cases a little bit. And I want to move to our second discussion point to do that. How the latest techniques in conversational AI and generative AI will allow us to engage more customers and be more effective in customer experience. I guess I'd like to make a little bit of a distinction, and please help me, gentlemen, with this, a distinction between conversational AI and generative AI. But my question to you folks is, what are some of the use cases that we should be looking at that can provide a template for us moving forward? What is one way that generative AI, for example, can be used to engage with more customers more effectively? Stephen, tell us a little bit about your experience with generative AI and where we can apply it in ways that matter.
Sure. Well, I mean, I look at conversational AI and generative AI as really complementary disciplines, where conversational AI is kind of associated with generating responses powered by natural language processing. It's really more task oriented and his kind of tends to provide more direct answers to questions and many times, at least historically, have been inputted manually. But then generative AI in the picture kind of automatically generates content using data inputs, machine learning algorithms, data, as I mentioned, that an organization already has. And then the goal here is to deliver more nuanced responses, but also can be used for reasoning, classification, action taking as well. So when you put them together, I kind of look at ultimately there's an opportunity for the best of both worlds, with them working, with these disciplines working together and ultimately creating more natural conversations. But I mean, kind of the thing here is that you need to be able to use this in a very practical manner, a guarded manner. And so when you look at kind of introducing AI and generative AI into your workflows and the various large language models, you ultimately need to look at a solution that analyzes parameters and the knowledge bases of which you're getting data from, to see that ultimately the model returns an answer, for example, that makes sense. So ultimately you need kind of those safeguards in place, just where you have context understanding, analyze responses as kind of key elements of having conversations with customers, and then also providing additional safeguards such as live agent fallbacks and more traditional AI dialogue flows to ultimately kind of tailor it to, together having more easily deployed natural conversations at scale, but also with responsible, safe, and guided use. So it's really, many of the use cases that we're talking about here in terms of interactions are now done much more, can be done much more intelligently. So you have these virtual agents. So think in terms of self-service, for example. You're ultimately creating more intelligent virtual agents that can answer more responses quicker, more readily, and in a more detailed way. You can use more natural voice interactions, for example, for those interactions. And then also, so it's both how you can leverage it for the customer, but then also for someone that's providing, as I mentioned earlier, providing live support. How can that guide the customer? So it's really talking about many of the use cases that we've been talking about: self-service, notifications, what have you, appointment scheduling. These are all the use cases that are elevated now when you have a much more conversational interaction, more context, more insights.
And it allows me to scale. If I need to scale up my service to more and more people, perhaps around the globe, this allows me to scale.
Oh, absolutely. And so, thinking in terms of I need to grow into a new region. So you have tools that operate in that, you have the technology operates in natural language. And so you can really scale, and the capacity there is as you say, very scalable, of course.
All right. Now, Eric, all right. What is one way that I can use AI to engage my customers in ways that really move the needle in terms of key performance indicators that indicate organizational performance?
I think I need to push back on, I think, what the exchange between you and Richard just now, and reiterate what I'm saying before. It's not autonomous. You can't unleash these chatbots in general unless it's for entertainment purposes or sort of a whimsical thing. Yes, everybody's enthusiastic about it, and it's extremely impressive and enticing. It's almost seemingly human-like, but it's not human-like ultimately. You can't rely on it to be correct. It was trained to figure out what the next word should be, essentially, on that level of detail, not to pursue higher order goals like being correct or knowing the right answer when you would expect a human expert to. You can't just unleash it. Yeah, of course, it potentially would be scalable. That's the whole point. That's what computers are for, are to automate. And if you can automate something that a human would do, then it scales very well. Unfortunately, we can't. I think it's really important to temper the hype. And so it's important that everyone holds two ideas in their head at the same time. This stuff is amazing and unprecedented. I spent 6 years in natural language processing research in that research group at Columbia University as part of my PhD before I was on the faculty there. And I never thought I would see what we're seeing today in large language models, generative AI that could be for a chatbot or that generates writing in natural languages like English or computer code. But that doesn't mean it's reliable, or we can just sort of expect it to anytime soon do what humans are capable of in the full capacity. In that sense, it can't be. And that's the irony, is that we're not headed when we start, now that we have these systems that are more seemingly human-like, they're actually less potentially autonomous. Whereas for something predictive, these predictive applications, there's more leniency the way they're actually being deployed intrinsically. So it's already a numbers game where we're getting it a lot wrong, allowing transactions to go through that are fraudulent, contacting customers with marketing who are not going to buy. Obviously, business is a numbers game. We're playing it as well as we can. Now we can tip the odds better in our favor. And those are places where it can autonomously decide which of these million customers should I spend $2 sending a brochure? Which of these hundreds of millions of transactions should I block automatically on the fly as potentially fraudulent? That's where you do have autonomy. You need humans in the loop when it comes to it doing these sort of human-like capabilities like writing English.
So Eric, then are you recommending that we do not move forward with generative AI or conversational AI in the way that we engage with customers, or where are the applications where it makes sense?
Well, it's great. It writes first drafts. So if you have to write 100 letters to customers every day, you as an individual customer service employee, a human, and the thing's going to churn out first drafts. Right now, exactly how much that improves your efficiency, it might double your efficiency. It might, in other words, cut the amount of time it takes per letter by 50%, maybe more. It depends. It depends on the nature of the task, the particular large language model, such as ChatGPT that you're choosing to use, and you as an individual. It's experimental. You just have to try out and see how much it helps. And I think that that's another important aspect, is that we need to start, if we're trying to do enterprise, and again, the humans in the loop. So yes, I advise against companies in general, for most use cases, unleashing a chatbot as if it could take the role of a human, where customers directly interact with it. I don't mean that it's an absolute no-go. There's an entertainment value. There's places where you could kind of issue a warning and say, hey, you want to give this a try? You don't have to wait in a queue. Go ahead and chat with it. Maybe it'll help you. Maybe it won't. We can't promise anything. But you can't just simply, without qualification, expect that it's going to be performing well. We all know that it's just not designed in general to be correct or know the correct answer when it should. Now, that's another layer of research, but it's TBA, right? It's a big research area. So in general, for any enterprise use of whatever number crunching, whatever kind of machine learning, if you want to call it AI, you need to start with the potential outcome. How is this going to deploy? What large-scale operation is it going to improve, whether it's for predictive or generative technology? Either way, exactly which process is going to be changed in what way, and how do you measure the performance? What's the KPI that gets improved, and go ahead and measure that and find out.
Eric,
Stephen, did you have something to add?
Yeah, I do. I mean, Eric, I agree with really a lot of what you said there. And what I'm promoting here is the practical implementation of AI and introducing it into your workflows. I do think that in a lot of respects, it is experimental. And so you need to work on what use cases ultimately can benefit from having AI as an element, but there is that human in the loop. It is like I mentioned, a guarded, practical use of AI. So what specific use cases can benefit from that engagement? In addition to, I know we're focused on the enterprise here, but thinking about mid-level businesses where ultimately we have one customer, for example, that uses AI to basically provide a front-end marketing and support infrastructure, because it's a regional gym that really has all their resources tied up in training and operations. And so you can have situations where AI can benefit and address frequently asked questions, bring marketing announcements, and ultimately produce signups on a very automated basis. So it's really, there is a benefit. You can start small and grow at scale. But I do think that these use cases can benefit from AI. And I don't think we necessarily need to shy away from it completely, because ultimately these models are going to get only more intelligent. You're going to have knowledge bases that really do kind of fine tune the experience that really are specific to an industry or specific to use cases that can ultimately benefit here.
Right. I
Very
think it's
good. All right.
important to
We are here
define.
today. Oh, I'm sorry, Eric. I interrupted you. Please go ahead.
No, just saying it's really important to define exactly what are you predicting and what's done about it. So whatever the use case is, improving a number of customer sign-ups, et cetera. Yes, you want to have the business goal, but exactly how are you using what technology? That's really important to pinpoint in a very concrete, plausible way.
Absolutely.
All right. We are here today with Stephen Giuffre, Senior Product Marketing Manager at Vonage, and Eric Siegel, founder of Machine Learning Week and the author of the new book, The AI Playbook. We're here today talking about ways to elevate your customer engagement with AI. Now, gentlemen, in the time that we have left, I'd like to move to our third discussion point, and that is how AI can be used to drive customer loyalty through things like personalized communications. We've talked a little bit about this on the show before. Generative AI is being used to generate content that is highly personalized and responsive based upon customer interaction and customer data. This can up the game in terms of response time, and the quality and the completeness of that response. And indeed, many customers now prefer to interact with automated AI assistants, finding that they get the help they need more quickly and perhaps with less hassle than the old way of trying to talk to a human. Let's talk a little bit about personalization and the way that we communicate with customers. Stephen, how can AI be used to drive customer loyalty through more personalized communications?
So yeah, here too. I mean, really, kind of the backdrop here is that, and we mentioned this at the top of the show here, that basically, customers really express frustration when they have to repeat information, or they don't have their history tracked in terms of a problem that they have ongoing. So this is where I think AI does play a role. And ultimately, not only on the front end, where ultimately you can get more immediate and more intelligent self-service more and more, you're also having the ability to kind of, again, leverage the data that you have. So in other words, you have your CRM, you have your customer data. How can you leverage that on an immediate basis, but then also with regard to, if you have a live agent, how can they take advantage of tools that ultimately coach them? So, I mean, one great area related to personalization is that area of the agent assistant, the co-pilot, if you will, where it's akin to really having a full-time personal assistant. And this is really important from an agent standpoint, from a sales agent standpoint, from a customer service agent standpoint, which could coach and guide and really prompt, gauge sentiment, and then ultimately produce transcriptions. So again, it's really more about not just the automation self-service element to this, but in terms of across the board. And this really does work you want the personalized experience to happen across the customer journey. So in other words, it's from researching a product to ultimately purchasing, and then the support of that product, having kind of that, it's really tailored to you. And so certainly I think that's where the opportunity comes in. So, the more intelligent virtual agents, I think customers are now very frustrated with the more traditional IVR experience. And so, as I mentioned earlier, they expect to have their answers quickly, their problems resolved quickly, and then ultimately that contributes to that more personal experience that ultimately is related to their needs.
All right, very good. Eric, what's your take on this? What's one good example from your point of view of the impact of personalized communications on customer engagement?
Yeah, I'm going to turn to predictive examples, although I do think there's potential with generative, but I just want to ward off once again, this idea of a virtual agent that it's not a panacea. We're not going to just be able to unleash these chatbots in a reliable way anytime soon. I think it's important to ward off that. But if you've got a human who's writing responses, and they're using, with that human in the loop for every single response, they're using generative to create personalized, tailored responses, they may be able not only to increase their throughput and their efficiency and use of their person hours, but actually also upping the quality because it's being pre-drafted on a per customer basis. So there is potential for increased personalization there for sure, so long as you've got the human in the loop at every single output. Predictive, though, is where you really can improve existing large-scale operations, such as a marketing campaign meant to retain customers. So speaking to loyalty, and loyalty can be defined in various ways, but if you want to concretize it as being, hey, are we keeping customers around for a longer amount of time? That's exactly what you do by what's called churn modeling. You predict which customers are most likely to defect in order to target a retention offer. This is one of the two main hot marketing application areas, use cases of machine learning. So you can't afford, retaining a customer can be expensive, often in the form of a big discount. You can't afford to offer that to your entire customer base. The only recourse is prediction, and that's exactly what that use case is. So what's predicted, what's done about it, which customer is most likely to cancel, and use that to target a tailored campaign, providing probably a discount or a free phone or whatever it is meant to retain customers. And then in general, product recommendations, but any of these things you're doing, choosing the content of the email marketing, of which ad gets displayed, it's all about improved relevancy by way of predicting which type of content the customer will respond accordingly to.
All right, Eric and Stephen, I do want to open it up for some questions coming from our attendees today, and we do have some coming in. This one from Boris. Boris, thank you for your question today. Boris asks, how do we provide personalized communication while maintaining ethical standards and customer trust? Gentlemen, Stephen, Eric, I'll open it up to both of you. What would you say to Boris about customer trust and personalized communications and AI?
Yeah, go ahead, Eric.
Well, so in predictive applications, you're actually driving can be very consequential decisions about whether people get approved for credit, for credit application, housing, or even how long they end up staying in prison in the case of parole decisions that are driven by these predictions. So you do have very consequential decisions. The machines doesn't have clairvoyance, just like humans, but it may be predicting better than humans. It's still going to be making errors. So one of the main ethical considerations, which some people call machine bias, is when the costly errors that deny people resources that probably deserve to be granted it, that particular error, does it happen more often for one protected group, such as a race or national origin, than another? That's called machine bias. There's a ProPublica article often cited that's called machine bias.
Okay.
And so and I've taken that kind of stuff very seriously. I wrote a whole bunch of op-eds in San Francisco Chronicle, Scientific American blog. My dozen op-eds on these and related topics are at civilrightsdata.com. That's civilrightsdata.com if people want to read my take on this stuff.
All right, this question or comment coming in from James. James, thank you for your contribution today. James says, very interesting discussion. Good to see the pushback on oversight required for Gen AI currently, so it cannot be autonomous and needs supervision. But AI's competition has quite a few issues, which arguably means it could quickly become the lesser of two evils. Humans are highly limited in terms of knowledge. They make mistakes, they have biases, they have their own agendas, they need sleep, they get sick, and so on and so forth. And you can see the attraction of getting AI to the point where it can be autonomous. So, Stephen, what's your take on this? I mean, it really, the future will be the future in terms of what James is saying here. Is that about right?
Yeah, but at the same time, I guess the way I would term it, as rather than lesser of two evils, maybe, as I mentioned earlier, the best of both worlds. So in other words, it really does need to be complementary and guarded. So kind of going back to guarded communications, practical, safe. I think ultimately, the way you get this right is to really kind of balance, excuse me, the power of AI and the great outcomes that you can achieve with AI, with basically being able to have those be in compliance, have be ethical, and ultimately earn and keep that customer trust. So it is the role. There is that human factor here that is very, very important, where you have, for example, as you're developing your solution, as you're identifying use cases that ultimately can benefit from injecting AI into these experiences, it's also important to have, someone like a conversation designer on hand, either through your partnering with or within your own organization, to kind of guide the conversations flows, to guide those interactions, to make sure that it is. And ultimately, the best platforms are going to be the ones that incorporate that sort of the ability to adhere to these standards. So I do think that there's an opportunity here, and this is what we need to champion: the ability for the data to be more intelligent, with context, but also done so in a way that is backed by human interaction, and backed by other safeguards. So I think there's a lot of agreement here in terms of the role of this being a very balanced approach to customer engagement.
All right, we are here today with Stephen Giuffre, Senior Product Marketing Manager at Vonage, and Eric Siegel, author of the book, The AI Playbook. Gentlemen, in the very short time that we have left, I would like to ask each of you for one quick action item that our listeners and viewers can use to take advantage of your ideas and advice. Just 60 seconds action item for our listeners. Eric, do you have an action item for us today?
Yeah, for any use of machine learning, whether it's in the form of generative or predictive use cases, focus on concrete value, the use case. In the case of predicted, what's predicted and what's done about it? How is it going to be operationalized? How are you going to measure its performance in terms of business metrics and KPIs? Find something that's plausible and concrete, well-defined, get involved in the details. That's the theme of my new book, which ramps up business readers on the semi-technical understanding they need so that they can participate. You're what's needed for these enterprise projects to succeed, more than improvement in technology and better data scientists. It's a collaboration between both sides. There's a bit of ramp up, but it's really interesting stuff.
All right, Stephen, what about you? Do you have an action item for us today?
Sure. I think my message here is one of think customer engagement first, and then with the technology behind it to achieve it second. So in other words, what are your customer engagement goals? What are the practical steps that you can take to improve customer experience? Is it a better way to notify customers, to send out appointment reminders? Is it a better way to achieve self-service? Is it ultimately, how do you want to support your live agents? Think in terms of what your use cases are, what areas of the organization, what workflows do you want to improve? And think of it as, taking those practical steps. This is not, kind of doing everything at once. What are your goals? What are those? And ultimately, how do you achieve them? And take advantage of the expertise that's out there. And also, last thing I'll say is I'll point to a couple of resources on the Vonage site. There is what our customers are saying, and that's the Global Customer Engagement Report, the responses that I mentioned here. And then also we have an ebook that talks about how AI can ultimately elevate customer engagement. This is really just kind of a foundational piece to talk about the steps that you can take, the considerations you should have.
All right, that is Stephen Giuffre and Eric Siegel. Stephen and Eric, thank you so much. What a great discussion today. Your perspectives and advice were spot on. I thank you so much, and I hope that we do get a chance to talk again soon. And to everyone joining us today, thank you too, and thank you for joining in with your comments and questions today. Join us next week on February 20th at 1600 GMT, when I'll be back with another great panel of guests. Next time, talking about transforming your organization with generative AI. That should be another good discussion, continuing on some of the themes that we've been talking about today. In the meantime, if you'd like to find me, you can do so on LinkedIn. I'm happy to connect there. So check me out. I'm Kevin Crane. And you can check out my weekly audio podcast, the Digital Transformation Podcast, as well. But for now, that'll do it for this episode of Digital Transformation Talk. Until next week, I'm Kevin Crane. Thanks for watching.